Can we talk about guilt?
Being happy sometimes requires double the effort than just sitting in your feelings of sadness.
Like sometimes I feel like what I'm feeling is not like normal, and I know that I want to feel better, but often it's like thinking about it is overwhelming. Dr. Aanchal Sharma has witnessed and confronted the highest highs and the lowest lows of youth mental health. As a developmental behavioral pediatrician, she's devoted to supporting children and their families, finding real joy in the work and in the relationships she builds every single day. But Dr. Sharma isn't just a doctor. She's a mother, and her kids are her grounding force, a space of warmth and laughter where she can step away from the perfectionism that fuels her career. For her, balance isn't optional. It's the key that allows her to show up fully, both in the clinic and at home. In today's conversation, Dr. Sharma opens up about everything she's learned, about connection, about compassion, about what it means to care, both as a physician and as a parent. My name is Yuvan Rasaya, and every 2 weeks, I sit down with people from all walks of life who have something meaningful to offer. Lessons, stories, and honest reflections on personal growth. These conversations aren't about having all the answers. They're about learning from people who've lived through moments of loss, change, and renewal. Welcome to Lived Words. All right, so let's say I came to talk to you and I said, I've used this theoretical situation before just because it's something that I've experienced and it kind of applies to a lot of situations. Mm-hmm. Let's say that I came in and I wanted to talk to you and I said, sometimes I'm just sad.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no reason for it. I'm fine all week. And I wake up in the morning and it's like I can't get out of bed and everything sucks and I want to stay forever. What would you say to me outside of a medical?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting scenario and a very common scenario that I see. And I think a lot of it is like, tell me more about what you mean by sad. Sure. How long does it last? When does it happen? How frequently? And what's going on in your life around you during this time that might be related to why you're having these feelings?
Right.
Validation of feelings is very important. Feeling sad is not a sign of weakness. It's not a bad thing. It's just, we all have our feelings. It's how we handle them. It's how we cope with them. It's how we use those feelings to help us navigate what's happening around us.
Right.
The thing that would worry me in that is when you say that it's crippling to the point that you can't get out of bed, you can't do anything. That's when I think that there needs to be something. How can I help, basically?
Yeah. What
can I do? What can I offer to make things better? And so it's a tough scenario, but I'd have a lot of follow-up questions.
Sure.
And I'd have, I think I would be very validating of the feelings, but also want to figure out where you think I can be of service in helping you overcome those feelings.
Right. I think something for me that I've always been hard is, like, sometimes I feel like I know that what I'm feeling is not like normal, I guess. That's in quotes for everyone listening and not watching. And I know that I want to feel better, but often it's like thinking about it is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right? When I'm not sad, I don't want to think about being sad.
Right.
Because then I feel sad.
Right.
So I'd rather just pretend that it doesn't happen.
Right.
Right. So that I can stay in the happiness for as long as possible.
Right. I think that speaks to one of your coping strategies, and one of you have the ability to kind of suppress it and overcome it, but that doesn't mean that it's not still there.
Right.
And oftentimes when we are actively trying to suppress those feelings, that requires double the effort. So being happy sometimes requires double the effort than just sitting in your feelings of sadness.
Yeah.
And that can exacerbate underlying feelings of sadness and anxiety, because now you're working twice as hard. It's more mentally exhausting, and you get put in this internal loop or cycle of why am I feeling this way? Why is it so much harder for me than for everybody else? Because you can't read everybody's minds, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like everybody around you is happy. Why is it so hard for me to feel happy too?
Right.
And so I think it's really a good question, and I think it's a really hard question to tackle, because there's so many things that people talk about. Get some therapy, take some meds, do this, but nothing is a quick fix. Right. Nothing is an easy fix. And all of our brains are wired slightly differently. So what works for one person may not work for another.
Right.
So essentially, I think that it's It's about identifying what are the things that bring you joy, who are the people who make you safe, and how to utilize those things to bring you out of those moments. Because sometimes it's very hard to come out of those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there is often the idea that like, sometimes we feel that when we tell people like, oh, you can ask for help. Like I'm here whenever you need me, right? And like, it's a great concept.
Right.
Right? Because it's like, yes, okay, nice, I have a friend that we can talk to. But often, at least for me, it's like, I know I can talk to you. I feel like I can talk to you. I feel like I can trust you. But it's actually the talking part, right? That's hard. Right. Because it's actually getting into it. That's hard. It's explaining it really, right? Yeah. It's hard to explain.
Yeah. First of all, I think that there's many people who feel like asking for help or even just talking about it is a sign of like weakness or failure, that you couldn't tackle it on your own. Absolutely. So while you know you have the support network, accessing it, like the first step of just the first step is acknowledging that there's something going on.
Right.
Then the second step of trying to find some sort of system to help you, accessing that can be really challenging. Right. And as somebody who has dealt with my fair share of adversity, for sure, I totally understand what you're saying, because everything is interrelated. It's not one thing, oh, this one bad thing happened and that's why I feel sad. It's usually a buildup of multiple things over a long period of time, things that have directly affected you and indirectly affected you, things that you may be comfortable sharing and things that you may be scared to share, ashamed to share, or just not ready to relive those experiences. Yeah. So sometimes it's like, okay, just seek help, just talk to somebody. Well, if you're going to just go to a therapist, which is great, you have to first build rapport with that therapist. You're not going to just walk in and say, hey, this happened to me when I was 5, 7, 10, 12, and now I feel like crap. Like that's not going to, it's just not going to happen, right? So a lot of the kids I see, that's the biggest challenge, is finding someone they trust and they can build that relationship with. Because the people who are around you, who are like, I'm here to help you, if you go unload all of that onto them, most of them are not going to know what to do, right? They're either going to say, don't worry, it'll be okay, or they're going to be like overwhelmed by it and start getting overly concerned. You need to go do this, you need to go that. Sometimes the too much hyperstimulation in that moment could just make you feel more overwhelmed. So it's hard. There's no easy answer or easy fix, but I acknowledge it. I think it's a really tough space to be in. And as somebody who tries to offer support to people in that space, I think I find that really challenging of, what do we do next? What are the next steps to help this person? And that can be really, really hard.
How do I, when I'm in that kind of feeling of, I know I probably need help, but I don't feel like I don't want to ask for help, or I don't know how to communicate that I need for help. Yeah. How does someone get past that? So
there's no simple answer for that, but I would challenge you back to like have some introspection in that moment of like, what specific thing or group of things in this moment are the hardest for me to talk about? Maybe put those aside, and what part of all of this am I ready to talk about? What is the easiest part of this to talk about? Like, I had a really bad day today. Yeah. Maybe I start there. What was bad about this day? Or like, I failed this test and I feel really bad about it because I failed this test. And usually it's not just about the test. It's what that test represents, right? Yeah. Now that I failed this, I've let people down. I don't know what my next steps are. This is going to negatively impact my future, whatever it may be, right? So we all, as a society, often look as, failure is a negative thing. But as somebody who's failed many times, I think it makes you stronger and helps you navigate challenges, because life is going to always throw things at you, right? Right. So I'm not saying that, to go back to your original question, I'm not saying that, they're trying to make light of it, like, oh, just talk about the easiest part of what's hard. But I think that you have to start somewhere. Right. And sometimes also writing for some people, drawing for some people, music, whatever it is, some outlet for what you're feeling that's not necessarily sitting and talking with your feelings might be the first step. It's going to be a lot of you reflecting on where is the pain point and what kind of help are you looking for? Maybe you don't want somebody to listen to your problems. Maybe you don't want somebody to give you even a solution for your problems, but you need an outlet for it. Right. Is there a hobby? Is there like kickboxing class? Is there something where you can get that energy out, that sadness out, and give you some moment of clarity where you can kind of say, okay, in this moment, I'm feeling a lot of feelings, but the most easy one for me to access is this one, or this most comfortable part of this that I'm able to talk about is this piece. And you start there with a person who you feel like will understand where you're coming from.
Right.
Because sometimes those people who are there for you may not fully understand where you're coming from too, which also makes it challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. What has been an outlet for you?
What has been, sorry?
Been an outlet for you?
A lot of things.
Yeah.
I think before having kids, it was different. My perspective was completely different before having kids. Like I was like typical, like anxious straight A student who freaked out anytime I got like anything below like an A- kind of kid. Like you know, and I think part of that was cultural, part of that was myself. Like there's a lot of pieces to that. And then as I got older, had more experiences, experienced a lot of failure, I was like, okay, not everything is the end of the world and I will get past this. So beforehand, I don't think I had a lot of outlets, to be quite honest with you. And I think that I really catastrophized a lot of things and like was like, oh my God, this is like really bad and everything is gonna fall apart and I'm never gonna be successful and everything would spiral, right?
Of course.
And I would internalize a lot. I would write. I remember like as a kid, I would write a lot. I had a few really great friends who are my best friends to this day from like elementary, middle, and high school. They were my people. I feel like those were my sources, talking to my friends and writing a bit. Now I think it's more like just headspace, keeping myself in the right headspace and spending time with people who bring me joy, like my kids. I think they really shift my perspective a lot because you know, my priority is now their well-being and their health. And so if they're okay or I'm having fun with them, I'm able to put aside the things that are, it helps me shift my perspective.
Sure. And I mean, you work with kids all day,
yes,
right? Like that's your job.
Yeah.
And then you go home to your kids.
Correct.
Right? So could you talk a little bit about like, how is it different, right? Being a mom versus being a pediatrician. There's a balance there.
Yeah. That's a great question. A loaded question. A great question. I love kids. I've always loved kids. They bring me a sense of joy, truly. So when I go to work, I'm actually happy. Yeah. You know, I love what I do. I think I work in a very challenging space where I see a lot of children who have a lot of challenges that they need to overcome and a lot of families who are overwhelmed and often sad by the presentation of what's going on. And so I'm not, you know, I'm very well aware of that. And I think that I'm very sensitive to that. So it's not like all of rainbows and butterflies when I go to work, but I always see these beautiful strengths in every single child that comes in. And every child amazes me, truly, like with what they can do or what they overcome or what they learn, what brings them joy, or, you know, the things that they show me, the things that light up their faces. It makes me so happy when I see it and when I talk about it.
That's awesome.
And so that is, they have the pure like innocence and this way about approaching life around them that it just makes things seem as less intense than they need to. And I try to keep things very light at work when I'm with parents, even though we're talking about heavy things. I try to keep things energy really positive and happy because I think kids feed off of our energy. Right. So it's a balance, like you said. Right. And then I always make jokes with my patients and their families. Like I come to work and I tell you all these strategies and then I go home and my kids are screaming and running around and nobody's listening. And I'm like, okay, those strategies all failed, right? So I think that I take a little bit of from both places to each other. So I tell the families I work with, hey, I'm a parent too. I've tried this. It definitely didn't work, but give it a try, see if it works for you. So I bring that realistic approach there. And then the other way, you know, when I come home, I try to take a deep breath in and out and remember they're just kids, because sometimes it's like you're so hyped up from being at work and then you come home and you're like, why isn't anyone listening? It's like, they're just kids and it'll be okay. They're my responsibility and I need to just like, it's okay. Kids make mistakes. Kids make messes and kids run wild and that's okay.
I think that's a huge point because it's something that we often forget as we get older.
Yes.
Right? As kids, especially because I think society expects us in some ways to be older and in some ways to be at our age.
Yes.
Right? It's like, well, you don't get all the things that an older person would get in terms of responsibility, but also you have to, you know, be mature and all the things and not make mistakes.
Right.
Like that you would expect from an adult. And I think that at least for me and for a lot of people that I know, is growing up, you internalize that,
Yes.
right? It becomes a big thing because it's like, I have to be older than I am. I have to act older than I am, right? And yet mentally, biologically, I'm not there.
Right.
Right. I'm not at that point. And so the whole idea about making mistakes, like, of course, making mistakes is such a human thing.
Right.
Right. Especially when you're younger, but even throughout life, it's a very human thing. But we get so caught up on like, we have to be perfect because no one can know that I messed up.
Right.
That we lose track of like, that actually is what makes us human.
Right. I think part of it might be like being the oldest child in especially a South Asian family. I think we both have that in common. And I think that it is very much like this, whether it's outwardly said to you, it's just the expectation, like the global expectation. Like you said, you internalize this kind of like person that you need to be because you know the sacrifices your parents made, you know the sacrifices their parents made. It's like generational trauma kind of in a way that's being passed down. And so you're like, now are like, I have to embody this version of myself that does justice to all the sacrifices that were made by the people who got me to this place. I am so privileged to have all these things that my parents, my grandparents didn't have. And I'm complaining about being sad. Really? Like I failed this test when I had all this time to study. Like, and it's really a real thing. It's a real phenomenon. And I think that with the mistakes piece is that you want to be able to feel safe in the mistakes that you make, even if they're big ones, that you can go back home to your parents or to your caregivers or to your support system and say, hey, I made a mistake, and not worry. To your children. I tell my children I make mistakes all the time.
Awesome.
You acknowledge it, you model that behavior because you want them to feel safe in making mistakes. I mean, it's natural. So kids who are somewhere between like this 4 to 5-ish range to like 7 to 8, like they start going into this phase where they start quote unquote lying. Everyone's like, oh, my kid's lying. They're not taking responsibility. They're just trying to figure out like, wait, if I say this, I'm going to get in trouble. And then that won't be good. And I know I did something wrong. This is normal development. It's natural path, right? But if we start saying, hey, I have, like, you know when your kid's kind of lying to you, right? Especially when they're that young, they're not really good at it. Their poker face is terrible. And so if you're like, hey, I don't think you're telling me the whole truth, but whatever happened, whoever hit the other one first, whoever broke the thing, whoever ate all the chocolate, it doesn't matter. I just need you to tell me the truth. That's the most important thing. Nobody's going to get in trouble for what happened, but I really need to know the truth. And you just keep reiterating that, and eventually it should sink in and the truth will start coming and the natural consequences will occur for things. Is it really the end of the world? It goes back to my initial point. Like, how big of a problem is this? In the moment, I think we all catastrophize things and like in the exact aftermath of things. But truly, how big of a deal is it that a vase broke? How big of a deal is it that, like, I don't know, you got into a fender bender? Like, it's not. But in the moment, it's the worst thing in the world.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, the catastrophizing, I think, is a huge thing. And I think that there is an aspect of comparison that we make. Right? Where it's like, we are comparing, and you said it earlier, where like you're comparing to, oh, well, my parents had to do all this stuff, and so therefore I should be happier. Or even this person I saw, at my school has, all of these health challenges or is financially struggling. And, they're working really hard and I can't be successful. Like, I can't be happy. What is this, right? We compare so much to the people around us. And this is something that's an example that I use very often, and I really like it because, like, when you walk into a doctor's office and you say, your elbow hurt, my elbow hurts, right? And they'll ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, right? How bad does it hurt? And 1 is, you're fine. Right. And 10 is the worst pain you've ever felt. Right. And I think it's somewhere in between. Let's say it's a 10. I broke my arm. And it's the worst pain you ever felt. But I think the key is that it's the worst pain you've ever felt.
Correct.
Right. You cannot say, 10 is the worst pain anyone's ever felt, because how would you know?
Correct.
Right. I have no idea. I'm sure there's people who experience more pain than me and less pain than me.
And pain tolerance is different for each person.
Absolutely. And I think that it's such an important thing, and that applies beyond like physical pain too, where it's like when we have pain, guilt, shame, embarrassment, sadness, loneliness, whatever, it's relative to us, right? You can't compare it to other people. And we get so caught up in like, I have to this person is less sad than me and this person is more happy than me. And everyone around me is happy and I'm sad. And but it's, for one, is that you don't really know.
Right.
But also it's like, it doesn't matter in a sense.
Yeah.
It's are you happy is really what matters.
I think it's really hard in today's society to have that mindset because we are so unnecessarily connected with each other through social media and the internet. Don't get me wrong, like technology is great for what the good it brings, but there's no detachment. And everyone is showing the best version of themselves online and on social media. Right. And it's like, if all these moms have no issues and are like doing these things, if all these other kids are getting into all these Ivy League schools, everyone is getting like figuring everything out, why can't I? Right. And then the opposite of that is that you see the challenges that so many people in the world are facing today. Just so many sad things happening. Right. And you're like, I have so much more than that person does. And I'm not having to deal with the problems that person has to. And so why am I having these feelings? And the truth of the matter is we can't control how we feel. We feel how we feel. It really is just how our body is reacting and how our mind is reacting to the situation that we're dealt. But I think it's easier said than done to just like, hey, just get over it or just be happy. Right. Because you can tell someone to be happy. It's not going to make them happy. Somebody can have the most money in the world. They can be the healthiest person, like physical health and like but mental health. Yeah. It's not related. Like it's just a separate beast.
Yeah. What do we say then? Like if someone says, I'm feeling awful and I'm having an awful day and I'm so sad. And what do I do as someone, like I have no training or background? Right. What do I say?
Honestly, I think it's more about validating. I think we're in such a mindset of fixing everyone and everything. Yeah. Like, don't worry, it'll get better. Like, I think when my friends and I talk to each other and we call each other and we, in safe space, talk about all the things that are bothering us, we just like, it's nice to have someone just validate, like, that really sounds awful. Like, might use some expletives, but like, and things like that, right? But it's like, that sucks. Like, like that happened to you. And like, I'm here for you. Yeah. I'm just here to listen. I think that's the first step. And then if I'm like, oh, what do you think I should do? And if I'm asking for advice, then you can say, hey, like, have you tried this? Or maybe we can talk about this or talk to this person. I think we all go into a fix-it mindset, but I think we have to be in a more validating mindset because it's okay to feel sad. It's not okay to feel, well, I shouldn't say that. It's okay to have all your feelings, but I don't think that we want to leave someone in a state of despair. We don't want to leave them in a state of helplessness. We want to validate it. But if we're worried about their well-being, we don't want to leave them in that negative space. We want to help bring them out of it. Right. But I don't think we have to go into immediate fix-it mode for everything. But if somebody's in a true cry for help situation, that's different. Then you do want to bring them out of that because you don't want anyone to be at that extent of sadness or helplessness or hopelessness.
Sure. And I mean, to play devil's advocate, well, Dr. Sharma, I want to help them. I want to help them fix their problems. I have ideas. I have solutions. I have things that they haven't thought of. Yeah. Right? Why can I not help?
You can. Right? But maybe not in that exact moment. Maybe not at that first step. If we go straight to fix-it mode, sometimes people perceive it as, well, does that mean that like these what I'm feeling, like I shouldn't feel this way because I should have just thought of that and fixed it myself? Right. Or like sometimes they've tried some of those things and it hasn't worked. So is there something wrong with me that those things aren't working? Right. I absolutely think there's a space to be like, hey, I have these ideas or that's where that whole I'm here for you comes in. Like you listen, you validate, and then you're like, so are there things that like you want to talk about like that you think could make you feel better? Do you want me to how can I help? Like, are there things I can do to help you? Do you want me to come up with some ideas of things that like might make you feel better? Like you can present it as, instead of saying, this is what's going to make you feel better, as like, I actually felt that way too. And I tried this, like maybe you want to try that too. Yeah. Things like that. It's just a framing of things. I think people are very sensitive to the feedback they get when they're already in a place of vulnerability. Right. Can we talk about guilt? Yeah. Because I think it's such an interesting thing that when we think about mistakes, I think it's often something that people forget to talk about. Yeah. And in the sense that, in my mind, the way I think about guilt is like, if that's one of the most powerful feelings, negative feelings that you can have. Yeah.
right? A sense of guilt for knowing that you made a mistake, that you did something wrong, that you let someone down, right? It's huge. And I think sometimes when people come to us with mistakes that they've made, like even your kids come and tell you that they made a mistake, they have a sense of guilt already. And in many cases, what you are going to say and be upset at them for, if you were to, is nothing compared to how bad they already feel. Right. And I think often we get so caught up on like, oh my God, what have you done? Right. But you shouldn't have done that. I need to like teach you to not do that. But a lot of the time people know that they made a mistake, right? They know what they did is wrong. And you said that earlier, right? Where it's like, kids know that they messed up. Right? They know that they messed up. And it's so important that they feel like they can come to you and come to somebody, right? And people in general can go to a friend or go to a parent or whatever it is and say, I made a mistake, and not feel like now I'm going to be punished, now I'm going to be yelled at, right? Because I already know. I already know that I messed up, right? I already feel awful.
Right. I think guilt sometimes becomes interchangeable with shame. And it's your self-reflection and your internalization of how bad you feel about the situation. I think there's a lot of books and a lot of theories about how to be a great parent and how to be a perfect parent. And I don't think any of them are fully correct. I think there are strategies that work, and every child and every parent-child dynamic is unique. So you have to tailor things to your unique situation that you're in. But I will say that like when we're talking about guilt early on in young children, I think it's beneficial because kids don't know what guilt is. Like, and, you're not born with that. Like, I know what guilt feels like. It's a concept that comes in later on and that you learn about. But those feelings that I know I did something wrong, that's there. Like in those early years, like I was talking about. So when something does go wrong, it's like, oh, how did that make you feel? They could say it made me feel scared. It made me feel sad. It made me feel angry, whatever it is, whatever feelings they had. And then you validate those feelings. Like, I understand that you felt scared that you broke, whatever, I don't know, the vase, you broke it. That must have been really scary. I know it was an accident. It's okay. We can always get a new one. It's like this weird balance though, because right. Like I feel like my husband and I have this conversation a lot because he's like, they need to understand like the value of things and like not everything is replaceable and like you have like, money just doesn't grow on trees all the time, which is true. All those things are true. And I hear him and I know that those things are true, but I get stuck somewhere in between that and just like letting them be okay with the mistakes that they make, right? Because you also don't want to over-validate and then like make them feel like there's no repercussions or consequences. Like you have to teach the concept of right and wrong, but also acknowledge that there's a gray area in between that, and then not everything that bad that happens has to be the worst thing in the world. And then going back to your original question about guilt, I feel like it's a tough feeling because again, it's something that we often internalize because of the shame part. But guilt doesn't always have to equal shame. It could say, I know I did something wrong, but how do I come back from this? How do I learn from this? How do I grow from this? Not, I did something wrong and now I'm a terrible person because of it. And that's there's no like magic way to like figure out that nuance. And I think everyone is also very different in how they process that. And I think it has to do with the people around you and how they perceived those smaller bad things that happened along the way, because it starts as small things. And then as you get older, bigger things happen. And as you get older too, that like cushion you have around you of like your safe space people changes and more responsibility falls on your shoulders to like one of your last points about like having to feel like you're older than you actually are. It's like, you should know better. That like, you hear that all the time. It's like, you should have known better. And it's like, I know I should have known better, but here we are. Like our, especially for young teenagers, like brains are still developing. Like the frontal lobe is still maturing. Executive functioning is not something that, is there right from the time of birth. You're learning cause and effect, situation that occurs and the natural consequences that occur thereafter. It's a learning process. And if you've never made a mistake along the way and like you're an adult and you make your first mistake, you're not going to know how to cope with it. So like you said, mistakes are natural part of the process. Guilt is okay as long as you can process it in a healthy way and feeling supported. And I say all this with a grain of salt because it doesn't mean that the kids who are struggling didn't have all these things happen. You can have, quote unquote, perfect parenting and still have children who are sad
Yeah.
That is not a failure of parenting.
Right.
It's not a failure of the child.
Right.
It's just the situation that occurs.
Yeah.
And I think it's more so less about whose fault it is. And it's more about how can we support both the family and their child, and what systems are in place to support them, because I think the systems are not great. And that part is severely flawed right now. And so it's a really tough space to be in. And I acknowledge that. I mean, I wish I had the answers.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
We've kind of danced around it, and I want to ask you straight up. You are a developmental behavioral pediatrician.
Correct.
Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So I first trained as a general pediatrician. So the way it works is you go to medical school, then you do residency. So I completed my training as a general pediatrician, completed my board certification for that. And then I did a fellowship. So the way you have fellowships for like cardiology, endocrinology, pulmonology, all those kinds of things, there is a subspecialty within pediatrics called developmental behavioral pediatrics.
Okay.
And what we focus on, so I did my fellowship training in that for 3 years after residency, and then did the board certification for that. And what developmental and behavioral pediatrics, or DBP, is a focus on early child development. So looking at developmental milestones early on, speech, motor, social, those kinds of things. And then monitoring the development as the child grows. So I see kids somewhere, typically as the youngest I see is around 18 months, but like, somewhere around that time frame when you'd first start getting concerned that milestones aren't being met, developmental milestones. And I see kids all the way up to like 18 plus sometimes. And the typical presentations of kids that I see are, developmental delay, autism, spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, genetic conditions, anxiety, depression, those kinds of things. So, and it varies across like the ages that come in, what questions are bringing people to us, but it's generally, how is my child's development compared to what we would expect other kids their age to be doing at that same time.
Right. Okay. So that's like a definition. What does it mean to you?
What does developmental behavioral pediatrics mean to me? I think it means somebody who can be there with you as you navigate your child's natural growth from one age range to the next and the challenges that come with it.
Yeah.
And it's independent of diagnosis. I think kids develop and handle each of these kind of levels: preschool year, toddler years, preschool years, early school years, middle school, which is, in my opinion, the hardest, high school and beyond. How you navigate all of the challenges that come with each of because the social expectations change as you continue to get older. The academic expectations change. The perception of the world around you evolves for children as they're getting older. And so I think it's just somebody who, I think of myself as somebody who supports families as they're navigating their child growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so, and you might get these questions often.
Yeah.
You work with children.
Yes.
You're a developmental behavioral pediatrician. You work with children on behavior. Yeah. Right. And their development. So then are you a perfect parent then?
No.
Okay.
Definitely not.
But why not?
Because parenting is hard, and no child has like read the textbook before they're born and like follows all the rules. Plus, it's much easier for me to stay calm and level-headed when a friend or a patient contacts me about like a specific subset of concerns for their child versus when it's my own child. Yeah. Because your brain is just wired differently when it's your own child. Sometimes I don't think that's independent to me. I've talked to many other pediatrician moms where it's like you like can't be this is why you shouldn't treat your own family. Like I can't be a pediatrician to my children. Yeah. I call my pediatrician for any concerns I have for my child, no matter what my training is, because you need somebody who's like going to think about it in a logical way instead of throwing their emotions first. Now, I'm very sensitive and emotional. I cry with my patients and with their families. Like I'm that type of person, but I'm able to see it from like the bigger picture. And sometimes with their own kids, you can't. So no, I'm not a perfect parent. I tell all my patients, like my families that I work with, I never claim to be. I yell, I fight with them, I make mistakes.
Yeah.
I take ownership of my mistakes. Sometimes I get sad at night before bed because I think of all the mistakes I made with my kids that day.
Yeah.
I have guilt about going to work and not spending enough time with them. But then if I only spend time with them, I'm like, am I modeling like what I wanted them to see me in terms of my accomplishments? Like it's a constant internal struggle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So no,
Absolutely.
the answer is a hard no.
Great. Perfect. I am going to present you a situation that has happened to me. When I was, this is probably several years ago, a friend of mine came to me asking for help.
Okay.
She had been hurting herself, and she wanted to tell her parents and didn't know how, didn't feel comfortable. Something that she and I had talked about for a while, and I think we both kind of agreed that she should, right? She wanted to, and so she should. And I remember we were sitting at a table. I think we were eating breakfast or something, and she kind of just says it. Like she's just blurts it out, and the immediate reaction from her parents is, "No, that's not possible. Why would you be doing that? You're not doing that, right?" There's an immediate denial, and I think I didn't know what to do, right, in that moment, because I'm like, I know that it's happening. Like I've seen the scars, and I know that it's going on, and she knows that it's going on.
Right.
There's literal evidence of it going on,
Right.
and there's this denial from her parents.
Right.
And I think it was such a tough situation because she really needed to feel like her parents were there and understanding of her and would help her, and they completely were like, that's not true.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Like how does that happen, I suppose?
Yeah. I think that's a loaded question. First of all, is your friend safe right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tough situation for you, for her, for her family. Not an easy situation, and I don't think an easy answer, but this is the way I conceptualize it. When something, and this is just, my personal opinion, so I'm not saying that this is like by the book or anything, but I think that when something bad happens to your child, or they have a hard time, or even if they're diagnosed with something, parents often reflect knee-jerk responses like, where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? I know it's like, it becomes about them kind of in that moment. And I know I'm guilty of that. Like if something bad happens to my kid, immediately I'm like, I failed them. Like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Why did we get here? How did we get here? How did I not protect them from this?
Right.
We sometimes are looking at it as our failure as a parent when something like that happens to our child. That's one part of it. Second part is this denial that like, it can't be my child. Because you don't know immediately how to help someone in that situation. Sometimes it's easier to say, no, it's not happening, because to admit it's happening would be to admit like your perception that you may have failed, but also to admit that your child is having this huge struggle that no parent wants their child to have to go through.
Right.
And then it's, I think it's sometimes easier to deny something that's happening than to embrace it, because some things are just really hard to accept. I think in the immediate moment, sometimes we all are, the way that we're wired, we're all entitled to and have that immediate gut reaction to when something happens. And I don't know exactly what happened in that situation, but my hope would be that once they had time to process what happened, they would come around to what was going on and be there for their child. It also depends on their lived experiences, right? Did they ever go through something similar to this, and how were they met with having those feelings?
Right.
Was it acknowledged for them?
Right.
Were they met with the same kind of reaction, and did that have a positive or negative effect? It's still multifactorial and layered in terms of my response right now, but I think that it's not one thing in isolation. I think there's so many factors. The other thing is like cultural. Some cultures have stigma associated with this. People are better off not acknowledging it and not accepting it. And then the other piece I think that comes into play is not knowing how to help somebody when they're in that situation. Because let's say you do acknowledge it. Right. It is happening. Right. Now what? Parents often want to be fixers. Your kid brings you a broken toy, you fix it. You replace the batteries, you're the hero, everything's better, it's great. Yeah. There's not easy solution for a lot of these challenges. You can't fix the problem for your child. That's a really tough spot for a family like to deal with, or a guardian to be in. I keep saying parent, but I mean like caregiver, guardian, whoever the person is that represents that role for the person. It doesn't have to be a biological parent, right?
Of course.
I'm using that term very loosely, and I probably should have clarified that early on. But that I think that you want to fix everything and make things great for your child, right? And that's not an easy problem to fix. So I think there's a lot of reasons why that probably happened. And again, now, right? Again, hypothetically, I feel like possibly those parents who had that knee-jerk response later on probably felt guilt about how they responded, right?
Yeah.
And it's that vicious loop of everything we've talked about this whole time.
Yeah.
And then how they're internalizing their response to their child. Is it leading to them becoming sad? Is it leading to, it's just everything is so related. And I think it goes back to validating, like I said. So at some point, them validating her feelings, but also when she's ready, maybe she can validate and understand their response to her. Because my opinion and hope is that it wasn't coming out of a place of disregarding what she was feeling. It was coming out of a place of trying to protect her, protect her from her own feelings, and try to make it no, that can't be true. Let's distract you and take you into a positive headspace. And, it's that fix it mode versus it being no, this can't be true because we're mad at you that this is how you feel.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. I think it's so interesting because you mentioned that aspect of sometimes when things go wrong, and I think particularly for parents, any kind of really guardian figure, there's this immediate sense that I messed up.
Yeah.
Right? And it's almost the complete opposite of validating, because it's instead of saying, wow, you must be going through this, the parent is like, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Right. In the situation, how could this have happened?
Right.
I thought I was a good parent, and suddenly I'm not a good parent. And sometimes it's not about that.
Right.
Right. It's about social pressures. It's about school. It's about someone that they met the other day that was really mean. And it could be so many things. So maybe they, I don't know, slept badly. And now they woke up tired, and then they had a really awful day because they were tired, and you have no idea.
Right.
Right. I think more often than not, it's actually not about the parents.
Right.
Because there's so many other things that impact people growing up beyond just the family.
Right.
Right. And we get stuck in oh, I raised you as a parent, or I took care of you. But yes, true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. But you're not the only person.
Right.
Right.
We don't live in a bubble.
We don't live in a bubble. And it's nice that we don't. It would be worse if we did. But
the pandemic happened. We all saw that. So living in a bubble is not easy.
Yeah. And it's there's such a sense of we are together and we're a family and we're all this a big strong family, and how does something get into our family? But it's not like that. Right. You know what I mean? We're all kind of individuals and a family. Right. But individuals. Right. And that gets forgotten sometimes, I think.
It's hard to think about this without bringing up the cultural piece. I wonder how much of that is because of we have the same cultural background, right?
Absolutely,
so I think that when you say these things, I'm 100% yes. I sometimes wonder, and I have talked to my friends, my best friends who are of many different types of backgrounds. And while there's a lot of overlap of our lived experiences, there's also a lot of cultural nuances and differences. Right. And I think that, the family name, the family image, what other people think of us, it may not be unique to our cultural identity. I think other cultures have their own version of it. Mm-hmm. But I do think that the lived experiences that you're talking about, I see it in I cannot look at it in isolation outside of the fact that there is definite cultural impact.
Absolutely. Why? Why is that a thing culturally?
Clarify your question.
Sure. Why is there this cultural nuance that creates situations like this where someone feels invalidated by their parents because of kind of a cultural structure? What role is culture playing here that creates this? Because I agree with you that there is a pressure there that's created by it's a South Asian cultural thing.
Right.
It's a immigrant family thing.
Yes.
It's totally is a thing,
Yes.
right? And there's parts of that I think are amazing. In the emphasis of a close-knit family, I think was a huge thing for me growing up, and that I'm so happy that that was a thing for me.
Yeah.
But there is also the aspect of like that the whole bubble thing where it's like we must be only as a family and not as individuals, and that's not how it works, right? And I just sometimes I just wonder, like, how does that happen? How did we get to that point?
I don't have a perfect response for that, but I also think it's also interesting when we talk to, and you can tell me if your experience has been different, but I feel like when I speak to people who are from the actual countries that our families have immigrated from, their lived experiences are very different than
absolutely.
that. I just feel like it's completely different. And they sometimes don't feel the same types of pressures that I think that we feel. This is unpacking and talking about a whole other like range of situations. And I think that we may not cover it all, or this may not be a comprehensive response, but I think that when our families came and immigrated to wherever they immigrated from their original place, they not only had to hold on to those cultural roots and try to bring them to their next generations and preserve that culture, but they also needed to assimilate to the new environment that they were in.
Right.
And balancing that must have been extremely difficult for them.
Absolutely.
And so while they were trying to figure out that balance, they are now raising their next generation, right? And then it just goes a generational trauma. And then it goes from the next to the next to the next. And I think it's the sacrifice that was made, the guilt or the burden of that sacrifice that is passed down, because that what has been given to you is not something that came easily to your family. It just wasn't.
Yeah.
And so somebody made some big sacrifices along the way, and that is being communicated kind of down the generations as it's going.
Right.
And that's not to say that people who aren't, whose families didn't immigrate from one place to the other haven't made sacrifices and haven't had that burden. But I think that imbalance between cultural identity and assimilation is a really tough one. And sometimes I think it also adds on, like, if you see your child assimilating too much, you feel like you failed like your culture.
Yeah.
Or if they haven't assimilated enough, like it's just a weird situation. You're just kind of always trying to find that balance. And so sometimes the pendulum swings more in one direction to the other, and then it goes full circle back to parental guilt for like, why did it go one way versus the other? Where are the places that I failed? And then you pass on that guilt in like terms of the anxiety that you have onto your children. And then it's like a vicious cycle, like of everything we talked about. Right. So I don't have a perfect answer for that, but I think that culture absolutely plays a role in things, because there's also cultural stigma, how different cultures perceive certain things, what's considered failure in certain cultures, what's considered a sign of success in certain cultures. So you cannot look at things in isolation without appreciating that fact.
Right, absolutely. You had mentioned the pandemic, and I want to talk about it because it's such an unprecedented kind of thing that happened and had such a huge impact on kids, adults, socially, emotionally, the way that we handled ourselves. We knew how to interact with people. Completely different. I was in 7th grade during the pandemic. So that was 5 years ago. In the spring of 7th grade in March, we went home, never came back. Right. Spring break. Right. The most absurd, like the most insane thing.
I know.
And the way that school that I was at the time, LMS, the way that it worked was that we were in Puerto Rico at the end of February. We came back from Puerto Rico. We went home for spring break. That was it for the year. It was insane because we had our trip, and then we were like, come back to school. Gone. Finished. And it was remote the rest of the year, and it was awful.
Of course.
And I'm sitting there in the office room in my house at the time. I was using my mom's computer because I didn't have a laptop. I don't know, my sister was downstairs on our big desktop, like Mac. That's like, I don't know, so old. It barely even works now.
I love how you're like, oh, desktop's so old. I'm like, I grew up when like we had to like not use the phone when we used to have to get on the internet. But yes, okay, go ahead.
It barely works.
Yeah, correct.
Now, that time it was okay. And And, we're sitting on the screens all day.
Yeah.
And, you have a 15-minute break to go get some water and go to the bathroom and come back and get back on the screen for your next class. It was horrible.
Right.
And, you never see your friends.
Yep.
Right. There's no physical interaction. There's no actual connection with people. I think some of the nuances of class where it's like talking to your friends in class, right? You can't talk to your friends on Zoom. You can't talk to your friends on Zoom because you're sitting there and everyone's looking at the screen and there's a teacher talking. Or there's like a projection or a shared screen or something. Right. There's no actual conversation that happens between people unless you're asking a question. Right. And that was the entire spring, and then summer was I don't know, worse maybe because we could see anybody and there was no class. Right. So there was nothing. Right. And it was like you're just home and in your driveway, I guess. Like that was it. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. It was insane. And I was lucky because we were such a small school that I could go back. We went back in the fall.
Oh, you guys did? Okay.
So we were outside.
Okay.
The whole year. Basically. We never went inside, more or less. We were eating lunch outside. Like we just sit super far away in the winter and the cold. It was awful. Yeah.
What's nice about that school is they had a lot of outdoor space to facilitate.
They really did. Yeah. They really did. Yeah. And we were super lucky in that sense. But I know my sister, Molika, was so young at the time.
How old was she?
She would have been in 2nd grade.
Oh.
No, she would have been in, that's bad math.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to remember.
She would have been in 1st grade. Yeah, that would have been in 8th grade. So she would have been in 1st grade. Super young. Yeah. Super young. And her class was like, they're so young and learning how to like talk to each other. Right. And now they're not talking to each other. Right. And at lunchtime when they're supposed to be hanging out, they're sitting 6 feet apart on a field. I know. Like it's in the rain. It's awful. And I think it changed the way that her and her generation and her like people her age they thought about school, the way they thought about friends, the way they knew how to interact with people. It was such a huge shift. And on the grand scheme of things, it's only like a year or 2 years. But it's such a big 2 years for some people because at that age, it's such a big 2 years. Right. That's 1st and 2nd grade.
Correct.
Like that, so much changes. With
very formidable years.
Correct. Yeah. And I was lucky because I was older. But even in my grade, I know people who like are still kind of awkward socially interacting because there's a learning gap in how to interact with people, right? That was not learned.
You have to relearn. We had to relearn how to socialize with people.
Yeah, and that's a crazy thing to do.
Yes.
When at an age where it's like, for us it was at an age where you're kind of already supposed to know how to do that. Right. And for her it was at an age where you're supposed to learn how to do that the first time. Right. Right. Instead of learning how to socialize at 1st grade, you're learning how to socialize in 3rd grade. Right. Now everything is behind. Right. It completely throws off everything. And so you work with children and you've seen kids who've had this big change, right? Yes. What have you noticed? How did it change the landscape of like behavior?
It's such a, like you talk about your experiences at that point, we had to go to this model where we were seeing kids on Zoom and determining if they met criteria for certain diagnoses. We were developing models for how to virtually diagnose kids, and then like if we did, what services could they get? Virtual like therapies. Yeah, I mean, virtual talk therapy for young adults still not as terrible, for young kids. Yeah, like virtual early intervention. What is that, right? Like having a kid who's like zooming around the room to be like, okay, like come and sit and no, absolutely not. Yeah. So, okay, the pandemic. I will say so there's a lot to talk about here. One thing is that it wasn't the worst for everyone. Right. I had some families whose kids actually thrived during the pandemic because it took away the social anxiety. If they already had pre-existing social anxiety, it took that piece out of the puzzle. Right. It provided them with a way to actually engage in academic learning without taking away the things that were crippling them along the way and interfering with that process for them. The stress, the sadness, the bullying, the things that they were experiencing in the school environment, all of a sudden were no longer factors. Yeah. And their kids became happier, less stressed, less anxious. So not a bad thing for everyone.
What happens when they go back to school?
We'll talk about that in a second. Some kids never did. Some kids, went to remote home learning, because that model just seemed to work for them. Now, I'm not saying that, they didn't have their share of challenges during the pandemic, but some kids did do well during it. And some people did well during it. Like I know the positive, like I was able to spend so much time with my young kids during that time, but my kids were very young.
Yeah.
Right. I think the kids, and it's not just the younger kids, that elementary school kids that had a hard time. I think it was very challenging for them because they missed out on those important early years of learning and then had to basically learn how to be in school at a much older age than what we would typically expect. But I also think that people who missed out on their senior year of high school, people who had their first year of college during that pandemic time really suffered.
Right.
It's just those, when I think back, and especially on my first year of college, and what a social experience that was. And to know that like people I know, like my nieces and things like that, who missed out on that, it makes me sad because those are really important times.
Yeah.
I think that the pandemic definitely stunted some people's growth. It left underlying anxiety for many people because it happened once. Could it happen again? It made people very scared to interact with others because of what that could lead to, whether it was them getting sick or them bringing home an illness to a sick loved one or an elderly loved one who was at home. There was that fear factor. People were scared. I was scared.
Yeah.
We didn't know. Like going to the grocery store became scary. I vividly remember waiting in line outside my grocery store, waiting to go in and being scared that if I was in the aisle with somebody else, and I am a trained physician, right? Like it's like we were just scared. There was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of unknowns. It was a very scary time. It was a very unprecedented time.
Right.
We are trying to support kids as they are navigating the world around them back again since then. It feels like just yesterday, but also feels like so long ago at the same time. But I think people who lived through it, especially the younger years, it's going to stay with them. But I think each generation have had those things that have happened along the way in their formidable years that have a lasting impression on them.
Right.
For me, I think it was two things that I will never forget. One was Columbine. Second thing was 9/11. I was young. I remember exactly where I was when those things happened. I still tear up thinking about them. And I was in New York City, you know, so like I know people who lost people during those. And so like I would, right? And then you have like the pandemic and like the kids who are the same age as me during those things and how that like, so I know it's affected them.
Right.
Trauma is a real thing.
Right.
And the stress response that you have from acutely traumatic situations can have long-lasting effects.
Right.
I think we are also not well equipped in our current climate to handle the increase in people who are accepting, acknowledging, and recognizing that they need mental health supports. Because, okay, now we can diagnose more people. People are more open to it. Where do they go? What are their resources? So I think there is, you know, some kids did fine from it. Some kids were like, you know, they had a little bit of a rough spot, but they're coming back from it and they're doing a better job and they're doing okay. But there are some people who are stunted from it. Right. And some people who it showed also this opportunity to just stay home and not have those responsibilities and not have to go out. Now to have to like redo the things that like don't bring you joy or you don't perceive as bringing you joy. It's hard to reintegrate yourself into society. So I don't know if that even answered your question. I feel like I went off on a bunch of different tangents, but I think the pandemic happened. We all experienced it, but I think all of our experiences from it were unique. Yeah. I don't think everyone had the same type of response or reaction from it. Right. It was very scary at the time, though. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think the fear thing is such a huge one because one of the best ways that we deal with fear is comfort from other people. Right. Right. And there's no other people. Right. And there's no comfort. Right. And so you're just stuck in the fear. Yes. Alone. Right. Or with your family, but just the family. Right. That's it.
But it was also a weird time because not only were we all isolated from each other, but we still remained super connected through social media and the internet. So it was like just a weird dichotomy there of like you're alone, but then people are posting these things, but a lot of things they're posting are fear mongering and things like that. And so you're further isolating because you're getting even more scared and you're watching the same things on loop. About like all these, it was a wild time.
And there's that one dude on Instagram posting about how he's still traveling the world and you're like, what's going on?
No, I wonder if I don't know.
Like how does these things work?
I can't I'm going to leave that one alone, but like it just, yes.
It's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. And for me, it's one of the strangest things I think about the pandemic is And this is, and as you mentioned, things like 9/11, other traumatic events that people have experienced. There is, like you said, there's been things for every generation, right? To varying degrees. And it's always fascinating to me. Fascinating is the wrong word, but it's interesting to me that how those things affect us over time.
Yeah.
Right? Because COVID feels so long ago, but it's only 4 or 5 years, right? And what the effects of that are on people, like on children.
Yeah.
Like Molika was in first grade. She's 10. Right. She'll be 11. Like I don't even know her development path. Nobody knows, right? She's 10. Right. But in 10 years, that is something that she still experienced in first grade, and it's so hard to predict how will that affect people in life, right? Because we don't have the sample size.
Right. We don't have. That's very true. Like some people are like, well, people are studying this, like the kids who had speech delays during COVID or had whoever this age during COVID, what do long-term outcomes look like? But we won't know that until the long-term time frame occurs. And then what do we do with that information, right? Because like the time for intervention in theory would have passed. It's a very challenging space. But I also wanted to go back to one thing you had said about it being like, those years. One year of time for a young child who's like 6 months old or a year old, that is a lifetime.
Right.
The amount of developmental progress that happens day to day, month to month, year to year is huge in those early years. Right. So it is absolutely, but I will say that just because a pandemic happened doesn't mean that people did not, that should not have been the reason why somebody cannot socialize completely, because you still have the opportunity to be at home with somebody, right? Yeah. So there, even if you were watching, listen, parents had to work. Kids were watching a lot of TV. There was a lot of screen time. That not every child who came out of the pandemic of the same age who watched a certain amount of screen time or was devoid of a certain amount of human interaction is socially completely stunted, right? Like it's not, that's not what caused these problems. I think that it made things challenging, but I think that there was possibility and opportunity for kids to still develop and grow and hit their milestones in the context of the pandemic happening.
Yeah, I definitely think there was pros and cons in the sense too, right? Yeah. I fell in love with basketball during the pandemic because I was able to watch basketball because I was home. My dad was home. Yeah. Used to travel all the time and he was home. And so we watched the NBA playoffs and in 2020 because they were delayed into the summer. And I fell in love with basketball. So that's a huge passion of mine now. But I would never have found it otherwise.
And spending all that quality time with your parent who was otherwise providing for you and working and doing right by you. It forced families, a lot of families, to spend some quality time together.
That is true. Absolutely true. But I think the dichotomy is that on the other side of things, I also started watching a ton of YouTube. And I still struggle watching a ton of YouTube because and I have since then. I'd never watched YouTube before that. But I was sitting on a computer in my room and I was like, I don't know what to do. I have an hour between my classes. Because they built the schedule so weird and wonky. And, I had an hour for lunch, then I had a class, and then I have another hour at like 2 p.m. What do I do for an hour? Well, I watched YouTube for an hour, and then I went back to class. Because there was nothing else to go do. Everyone else was busy in meetings or in class and in the middle of the day. There's nothing to do. So I watched YouTube, and so then I started watching lots and lots of YouTube. And I built these bad habits where now I really struggle to not watch too much YouTube.
It's addicting.
It is addicting. And I got into it because I needed to do something. And it's such a...
There's only so much crocheting people could do during the pandemic, right? Like you binge watch all the shows. But I think watching a movie and watching a show is very different than watching these short clips of things. And it is, I don't know the exact science of it, but it is very addicting. The YouTube, TikTok, all of that stuff, it's not good for you. It really isn't. And you get sucked into the algorithm that exists out there. It takes you down this rabbit hole. And a lot of people fell into the rabbit hole of conspiracies. It's it's like, oh my God, did that really happen? And now with AI, sometimes there are videos out there that you perceive are real and they're not real. And I don't know, I can't tell the difference. Absolutely. And so, that's why I stay in my wheelhouse. I'm like, I can't be there's some things that are just, and I think these are challenges that the generations that preceded us did not have to deal with, right? And so then how do you counsel a child on how to navigate things that you didn't have to navigate as a parent or as a pediatrician, right? Like I never had to like battle with those demons, right? And so we all had our things, like I said, and there's adversity that we've all had to overcome. But the new generation and the new developments in technology brings new challenges each day too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, so this was an awesome conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I have one final question. I end every conversation with this. What are some words you choose to live by and why?
I don't know if it's too cliche, but I want to say this too shall pass. I think that is something that my parents really helped, a concept that my parents helped me understand and embody. Like I was talking about earlier, I think that when bad things happen and they happen in the moment, they can feel like the end of the world. And bad things have happened to me and to my loved ones. Small bad things, real big bad things, right? But that time has passed. In retrospect, I can now recognize and understand that those bad times will pass.
Right.
Brighter days are ahead, better times are ahead. And they may not pass quickly, but they will pass. And they may not be gone, but you learn from them and you may have to carry them with you, you know, as you go through things. But I think that's important, especially when I'm counseling or talking to other families and children and young adults, that especially young adults, we are so, young adults, I say we as if I'm a young adult, but young adults are, you know, they tend to be a little, they tend to think that everything revolves around them, which is fine and normal and developmentally appropriate. And they tend to think that like whatever happened to them is the end of the world. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not. And to bring that clarity and saying, I know this bad thing happened, validating, but then saying it will get better. And there's a reason why I think it'll get better, because something similar happened to me or someone I know and things got better.
Examples that are I think so important.
Because when you're standing there and preaching and people don't think that anything bad has ever happened to you, they're going to be like, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, this too shall pass.
Yeah. I talked to my mom about that recently, and she was like, so many of these people who were like, how to live your life better, how to be happy in life, are all happy in life. And it's like, well, I'm not happy in life. So it's hard to relate to you. But it's the examples of like, look, I wasn't, right? I wasn't. And the kind of the catch-22 there is if someone who is sad and depressed and unhappy in life came and told you, here's how to be happy in life, you'd be like, yeah, all right, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you haven't done it, right?
Exactly.
So why would I listen to you?
Right.
And then if it's someone who is happy in life, you say, well, you have no idea what it's like to be me.
Right.
So there's always like, there's no right answer here. And I think that's why it's so interesting that we have conversations like this, because the whole premise of this podcast is that I am struggling with my mental health and I am on a journey. And I have been on a journey for years. And I am on my own journey trying to learn. And all these conversations are me learning. Hopefully other people learning too. And I think that's the beautiful thing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.